Sapphire tiara of Elizabeth II. Tiara kokoshnik. Burmese tiara. Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. The Greville tiara. Imagine walking into a room filled with centuries of history, where every sparkle tells a story of power, legacy, and intrigue. This is not a royal museum or a display in London's finest gallery, Number. This is the private, almost secret world of Queen Elizabeth II's personal jewellery, a collection that has dazzled the world, yet today its fate is shrouded in mystery. Few realise it, but this priceless treasure, accumulated over generations of the House of Windsor, has already been quietly dismantled. And what remains might soon ignite one of the most sensational scandals in the modern monarchy. Elizabeth II's collection was staggering in scope. Around 20 tiaras, almost 100 brooches, dozens of necklaces, bracelets, earrings, rings, watches. The sheer scale is breathtaking. Each piece is not merely jewellery, it is a witness to history. The Burman tiara, with rubies and diamonds sourced from Burma and India, tells stories of royal diplomacy. The sapphire tiara connects Elizabeth II to the Belgian princesses of the 19th century. And the iconic Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara isn't just a crown jewel, it is a symbol of generations of women in the royal family. Yet here's the twist. Unlike the crown jewels of Britain, which legally pass from monarch to monarch, these treasures were the Queen's personal property. According to her will, their future was entrusted to her heirs, but the details are sealed for at least 90 years. Nobody outside the family knows for certain who will inherit what. But appearances, public events, and photographic evidence tell us that some of these treasures have already been claimed. And here lies the scandalous possibility. The Queen Consort, Camilla, now frequently appears wearing some of Elizabeth II's most famous tiaras. This includes the Burman tiara, the Sapphire tiara, and the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, crowns that were once inseparably associated with the late Queen herself. If these jewels remain in Camilla's possession, legally and ethically, she is under no obligation to pass them on to Catherine, Princess of Wales, or her children. And what if one day Camilla's descendants decided to auction them off? Imagine the headlines: Queen's tiara sold at auction. The shock would eclipse even the most infamous royal controversies of recent years. The unravelling of this collection is not just a matter of inheritance, it is a story of law, family bonds, and shifting traditions. For decades, royal women like Alexandra of Denmark, Mary of Teck, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon passed their jewels down to the next generation, typically to the wife of the heir. But history did not bind Camilla in the same way. Her lineage is separate, her interests her own. And that is why the very heart of Elizabeth II's personal legacy may already be, quietly, under new ownership. Let's begin with one of the most visually striking pieces, the Burman tiara. Crafted in 1973 by the legendary House of Garrard, it combines rubies gifted from the people of Burma with diamonds from the Hyderabad princely state in India. When Queen Elizabeth II first received it, it was a statement of global diplomacy as much as personal taste. Fast forward to recent years, and this same tiara has been seen on Queen Consort Camilla, worn during formal dinners with heads of state, including a lavish banquet with the Japanese imperial family. By appearing in Camilla's possession, this tiara subtly signals a quiet, almost invisible transfer of royal heritage. Then there is the Sapphire tiara, a masterpiece originally transformed in 1960 from a 19th century necklace owned by Princess Louise of Belgium, a member of the House of Saxe-Coburg. This tiara was a favourite of Queen Elizabeth II. She wore it frequently, including during historic state visits to countries like Russia in 1994. Today, however, photographs show Camilla wearing it on several official occasions. The implication is clear. Some of the Queen's most cherished personal treasures are no longer exclusively associated with her direct heirs. Perhaps the most storied of all is the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. This piece dates back to 1893, commissioned for a royal wedding, and financed by a committee of thousands of young women across Britain and Ireland. It became an iconic symbol of Elizabeth II's reign, appearing in countless portraits and ceremonial events. Traditionally, such tiaras passed down the female line within the Windsor family. But here lies a curious anomaly. This particular tiara was received by Elizabeth II directly from her grandmother, Mary of Teck, bypassing her mother entirely. Today, it too appears in Camilla's collection. This raises fascinating questions. Historically, queens and princesses passed jewels to the next generation of royal women, typically the wife of the heir apparent. But Camilla is not the biological mother of Prince William, nor is she closely related to Princess Catherine or Princess Charlotte. There is no legal or moral obligation for her to pass these tiaras along, and so a subtle fracture emerges in what was once perceived as a continuous royal lineage of jewellery inheritance. The story continues with other historically significant tiaras. The Kokoshnik tiara, gifted in 1888 by Empress Maria Feodorovna of Russia to Queen Alexandra of Denmark, showcases exquisite craftsmanship inspired by Russian imperial design. Camilla has also been seen wearing this piece, reinforcing the notion that the redistribution of Elizabeth II's jewellery is actively unfolding before public eyes. It's worth noting that two more pieces, the Delhi Durbar tiara and the Greville tiara, were already transferred to Camilla during Queen Elizabeth II's lifetime. The Greville tiara, originally created for Lady Margaret Greville in 1901, was willed to Queen Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon in 1942 and eventually passed to Elizabeth II, who, in turn, seems to have entrusted it to Camilla. What emerges from these examples is startling. 6 out of roughly 20 of Elizabeth II's most famous tiaras are now clearly associated with Camilla. The fate of other historic pieces, such as the Vladimir tiara and several other legendary jewels, remains uncertain. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. Brooches, necklaces, bracelets, and rings likely follow the same complex pattern of inheritance and discretion. The collection that once symbolized continuity, tradition, and royal heritage is quietly fragmenting. And as Camilla and her descendants determine the future of these treasures, the world may witness an unprecedented reshaping of one of the most famous private jewelry collections in history. Imagine this: a glittering tiara, once worn by Queen Elizabeth II at a state banquet, suddenly appears under a spotlight at a world-famous auction house. Headlines scream, "Queen's tiara sold for millions." The public gasps, royal watchers debate ethics, and social media explodes. This scenario, once almost unimaginable, could very well become reality. Because the truth is, many of Elizabeth II's personal jewels are now in the hands of Queen Consort Camilla, and she is under no obligation to pass them on to the next generation of the royal family. Historically, the transfer of royal jewels followed a predictable pattern. Alexandra of Denmark, Mary of Teck, and Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon all ensured that family jewels moved along the female line, typically to the wife of the heir apparent. These heirlooms symbolized continuity, prestige, and the enduring legacy of the monarchy. But with Camilla, the pattern changes. She is not biologically tied to the line of succession in the same way, and her personal priorities, her own children and grandchildren, may dictate the future of the collection. Now consider the legal complexities. Elizabeth II's will, still sealed for at least 90 years, dictates who inherits what, but the lack of public transparency creates room for speculation and potential disputes. If Camilla's descendants were to sell one of these historic tiaras, like the Sapphire tiara or the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, The result would be more than a financial transaction. It would be a cultural and historical shock. These jewels are more than mere accessories. They are symbols of British heritage, intertwined with diplomatic history, personal stories of the royal family, and public imagination. Public appearances already hint at the subtle redistribution. Photographs repeatedly show Camilla wearing multiple pieces formerly associated with Elizabeth II. The Burman tiara, the Kokoshnik tiara, and the Delhi Durbar tiara have all been spotted on her. And with each appearance, whispers grow louder. Which pieces have already been transferred and which may never return to the hands of the next generation? Even items like brooches, necklaces, and rings, which often carry personal sentiment and historic significance, follow this invisible migration. There is also an ethical dimension. Royal enthusiasts might argue that such treasures should remain within the line of succession, or at least within the immediate royal family, preserving the continuity of tradition. Yet, legally and personally, Camilla has the right to determine their fate. This tension between legal ownership, family loyalty, and public expectation creates a silent drama unfolding in the world's most scrutinized monarchy. And the stakes are immense. Auctioning just one of these tiaras could spark international headlines, debates about heritage preservation, and perhaps even calls for legislative intervention. Could the world witness the first sale of a jewel that was once an emblem of Elizabeth II's reign? It is not impossible. The Queen's collection, carefully curated over decades and inherited through generations, is quietly fragmenting. The very jewels that once defined royal continuity may soon become symbols of a modern monarchy grappling with private ownership, personal choice, and the public's insatiable curiosity. While some of Queen Elizabeth II's most famous tiaras have clearly appeared on Camilla, several others remain shrouded in mystery. Among the most talked about is the Vladimir tiara, a stunning piece inherited from the Russian Romanovs. Unlike other tiaras, it has a fascinating history. Originally owned by Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia, it survived the Bolshevik Revolution, made its way into the British royal collection, and became one of Elizabeth II's signature pieces. Yet, in recent years, it has vanished from public view. Who currently wears it? Is it safely stored, waiting for the next royal occasion, or has it already quietly changed hands within the family? Then there are other historic tiaras whose fates remain uncertain. The Greville tiara, once belonging to Lady Margaret Greville, and the Delhi Durbar tiara have been accounted for, but what of lesser-known pieces, perhaps kept in private estates, royal vaults, or even with family members who rarely appear in public? Each missing jewel is a thread in a tapestry of secrecy and speculation, a puzzle that historians, journalists, and royal enthusiasts have tried to solve for years. This uncertainty creates an unusual kind of suspense. Unlike the crown jewels, which are publicly displayed and heavily documented, Elizabeth II's personal collection is private, intimate, and legally her own. As a result, every public appearance, every photograph becomes a clue. Observers note which tiaras appear on Camilla, Catherine, or other family members. A sudden absence of a favourite piece can ignite rumours. Has it been loaned to another relative, sold, or simply retired into a private collection for safekeeping? Even beyond tiaras, brooches, necklaces, bracelets, and rings follow this pattern of hidden movement. For instance, certain brooches that Elizabeth II wore during state visits are now regularly seen on Camilla, suggesting deliberate transfers or early inheritances. The same is likely true for smaller but historically significant items, from diamond earrings to personal pendants, each carrying stories that intertwine with British history, royal diplomacy, and private sentiment. The tension lies not only in what is known, but in what cannot be confirmed. Elizabeth II's will remains sealed for at least 90 years, leaving the public and historians in suspense. Speculation fills the gaps. Which jewels will remain within the immediate royal family? Which might be passed down to Camilla's own descendants? Could some pieces one day appear in auctions, private collections, or unexpected locations? The possibilities fuel intrigue and, for royal watchers, a sense of silent drama that unfolds quietly behind palace doors. In this way, Elizabeth II's collection is no longer just a treasury, it is a living narrative, a story of inheritance, choice, and secrecy. The jewels, which once symbolized continuity and stability in the monarchy, are now active players in a drama of legacy, family dynamics, and the shifting sands of royal protocol. Each missing piece adds a layer of suspense, a question mark that will likely remain unanswered for decades. The story of Elizabeth II's jewellery is not just about gemstones, gold, or craftsmanship. It's about legacy, symbolism, and the fragile line between private ownership and public expectation. These jewels were more than accessories. They were woven into the very identity of the Queen and, by extension, the monarchy itself. Each piece carried a narrative, a state visit, a diplomatic gift, a family milestone, or a public statement of continuity. Now, with the quiet redistribution of these treasures, the monarchy faces a subtle but profound challenge. Consider the optics. For decades, royal protocol and tradition guaranteed that historic jewellery remained visible within the family line and associated with specific roles. When Alexandra of Denmark or Mary of Teck passed on their tiaras, it reinforced a sense of stability and continuity. But with the current redistribution, particularly pieces now worn by Camilla, who is not a bloodline heir, the traditional narrative shifts. The jewels no longer merely symbolize continuity, they also highlight personal discretion and changing family dynamics. The monarchy, once anchored in ritual, is now navigating a more fluid and potentially controversial reality. Public perception is another dimension. Royals have always existed in a paradox, private individuals whose lives are intensely public. Jewellery amplifies this tension. When a tiara like the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland appears on Camilla instead of Catherine, the public notices, speculates, and debates. Social media and tabloid coverage can transform a private inheritance into a national story overnight. Even without auction sales, the mere visibility of these jewels outside their traditional line of succession creates intrigue and, occasionally, tension. Historical precedent adds weight to the drama. Past royal jewels occasionally sparked debate, but rarely did they carry the risk of scandal we see today. Imagine if one of these tiaras, say the sapphire tiara or the kokoshnik, were sold outside the royal family. It would not only be a financial transaction, it would be interpreted as a rupture in the symbolic continuity of the monarchy. Cultural commentators, historians, and royal enthusiasts would debate the ethics, the propriety, and even the legal nuances. For many, it would be a shocking departure from centuries of tradition. Moreover, the redistribution highlights broader questions about inheritance, loyalty, and the modernization of monarchy. Queen Elizabeth II's careful curation of her collection reflected her understanding of legacy, both personal and institutional. Yet the current situation reveals a tension between private ownership and the expectations placed upon royal family members. Camilla, in exercising her legal rights over the jewels, may unwittingly redefine how royal treasures are perceived and managed in the 21st century. Ultimately, the story of Elizabeth II's jewels is far from over. With some tiaras clearly in Camilla's possession, others missing or unaccounted for, and the sealed will keeping many details secret, the suspense remains palpable. These treasures, once silent symbols of continuity, now actively shape the narrative of the modern monarchy, an unfolding drama of inheritance, personal choice, and public fascination. For historians and royal watchers alike, the next decades will be filled with speculation, revelations, and perhaps the occasional scandal that redefines how the world sees the British royal family. While tiaras often steal the spotlight, Elizabeth II's collection of brooches, necklaces, and rings carries just as much history and intrigue, sometimes even more personal significance. Take, for instance, the Kent diamond brooch, a striking piece frequently worn by the Queen during diplomatic visits and state ceremonies. Its glittering stones were not only a symbol of elegance, but also a subtle statement of continuity, linking generations of the Windsor family. Today, photographs show that certain brooches like this one, or the Cullinan Fay brooch, appear on Camilla's lapel during high-profile engagements, quietly signalling shifts in ownership that the public rarely hears about. Necklaces, too, tell remarkable stories. The Queen Mary fringe necklace, originally part of the Georgian crown jewels, became a favourite of Elizabeth II. Its pearls and diamonds graced countless official portraits and state banquets. Yet, in recent appearances, Camilla has been photographed wearing this very piece, demonstrating not just the elegance of the jewel, but the subtle diplomacy of inheritance. How personal choice now intersects with tradition. Even rings hold secrets. The sapphire Jubilee ring, given as a personal gift to Elizabeth II in her younger years, has been spotted in the hands of other family members, sparking speculation about the Queen's intentions in distributing her private treasures during her lifetime. Each ring, each pendant, each bracelet carries stories of marriage alliances, royal visits, or intimate family moments, creating layers of narrative that go far beyond their material value. The distribution of these jewels also highlights a remarkable tension: legal ownership versus historical expectation. While crown jewels are publicly owned and preserved for the nation, personal jewellery, like the Queen's brooches and rings, legally belongs to individuals. Camilla's current possession of many iconic pieces underscores the unique position she holds. Fully entitled by law, yet operating under the watchful eye of public opinion. The potential for scandal exists not only in auctions, but in the subtle dynamics of public appearances. Who wears what, where, and when becomes a signal, intentional or not. Some pieces remain entirely mysterious. The Lover's Knot necklace, closely associated with Princess Diana and later worn by Catherine, Princess of Wales, reflects the interplay of inheritance and symbolism. What other personal pieces of Elizabeth II might be quietly circulating among less public members of the family? This unknown creates a sense of suspense akin to a detective story. Each public appearance offers a clue. Each missing item a question that may never be answered. Through brooches, necklaces, and rings, we see a fascinating microcosm of royal history unfolding. The jewels, long considered silent markers of legacy, now actively participate in shaping the narrative of the modern monarchy. They speak of choice, discretion, and personal agency within a centuries-old institution. And for those paying attention, they provide a rare window into how Elizabeth II's personal legacy continues to influence the royal family long after her passing. Looking ahead, the story of Queen Elizabeth II's jewels is poised at a crossroads. While some pieces are clearly in the hands of Queen Consort Camilla, the future of the rest of the collection remains uncertain. With Elizabeth II's will sealed for at least 90 years, no one outside the family knows exactly how her treasures are to be divided. This secrecy leaves room for speculation and for potential surprises that could captivate or scandalize the world. Imagine an auction in London or New York featuring a tiara that once graced the Queen's own head, or a necklace worn during historic state visits. The media frenzy would be extraordinary. The sale of a tiara like the sapphire tiara or the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara would dominate headlines for weeks. Historians, royal watchers, and enthusiasts alike would debate: is this a legitimate exercise of personal property rights or a shocking breach of royal tradition? Even without a sale, the mere possibility creates tension between private ownership and public expectation. Heirs' decisions will play a critical role. Camilla may choose to pass certain pieces down to her children and grandchildren, a logical choice to ensure their financial security. Meanwhile, Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her family may inherit only the pieces that the Queen explicitly intended for the next line of succession. This could result in a subtle reshaping of how royal jewellery functions as a symbol of continuity. Pieces that were once emblematic of the monarchy's unbroken line may now be scattered across different branches of the family, altering the visual and symbolic narrative of royal history. Public reaction is another unpredictable factor. Social media, documentaries, and news outlets have already heightened awareness of these jewels. Any high-profile sale or appearance could spark debates about propriety, ethics, and the responsibilities of royals in preserving heritage. Unlike crown jewels, these are personal treasures, yet their historical significance means that private decisions have public consequences. A single auctioned tiara could be interpreted as a cultural shock, shaking confidence in royal stewardship of tradition. Even the smaller, less famous pieces carry weight. Brooches, rings, and necklaces, often seen in photographs and official portraits, are imbued with personal and historical meaning. Each carries a story of diplomacy, marriage, or family bonds, and their distribution will continue to shape the narrative of the monarchy for decades to come. These items may not headline newspapers, but for historians and royal enthusiasts, they are equally significant in understanding the legacy of Elizabeth II. In essence, the Queen's personal collection has become a living story. It reflects not only wealth and taste, but also inheritance, discretion, and the delicate balance between private rights and public symbolism. The next few decades will reveal whether these jewels continue to tell a tale of continuity or become symbols of a monarchy navigating modern challenges, personal choice, and the relentless gaze of the world. The saga of Elizabeth II's jewels is far from over. It has merely entered a new chapter, one filled with suspense, speculation, and potential scandal. Among Elizabeth II's collection, a few jewels rise above the rest in both historical significance and public fascination. The Vladimir tiara, for example, is a marvel of imperial Russian craftsmanship. Originally belonging to Grand Duchess Vladimir, it was smuggled out of Russia after the Revolution and eventually came into the British royal collection. Elizabeth II wore it occasionally, sometimes adorned with pearls instead of emeralds, creating a versatile yet iconic look. Today, its whereabouts remain uncertain. Is it locked away in a royal vault, or has it quietly passed to another family member? Every public absence fuels speculation, as if the tiara itself is part of a suspenseful detective story. Then there is the Cambridge Lover's Knot tiara, closely associated with Princess Diana and later worn by Catherine, Princess of Wales. Its history is rich. Commissioned in the early 20th century by Queen Mary, it embodies royal elegance, continuity, and femininity. Unlike the Vladimir tiara, this piece has remained relatively visible in the public eye, suggesting that some jewels were intended to stay within the direct line of succession. Yet, even here, subtle questions emerge. Which other lesser-known tiaras or necklaces will Catherine inherit, and which might remain with Camilla or other family members? Another iconic piece is the Greville tiara, crafted in 1901 for Lady Margaret Greville, whose family fortune was legendary. This tiara was willed to Queen Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon in 1942 and eventually became part of Elizabeth II's collection. It is now often seen on Camilla, demonstrating how even historically significant pieces can shift between branches of the family. Each transition changes the story attached to the jewel, sometimes elevating it into public consciousness, sometimes keeping it shrouded in private mystery. Even smaller pieces, like brooches and rings, carry monumental historical weight. Take the Cullinan 5 brooch, made from the Cullinan diamond, the largest gem ever discovered in South Africa. It has appeared on Elizabeth II at numerous events, subtly reinforcing the monarchy's wealth and continuity. Yet today, Camilla also wears it, suggesting that the redistribution is not limited to large, ceremonial pieces. Every jewel carries a jewel role, an aesthetic statement, and a vessel of history. The question for the future is unavoidable. How will these jewels be handled over the next decades? Will some pieces remain permanently in the hands of Camilla's descendants? Will others return to the immediate line of succession, symbolically reuniting with the crown? Or will some eventually surface in auctions, potentially shocking the world and rewriting the narrative of royal inheritance? Elizabeth II's collection is thus more than just a treasure trove, it is a living narrative. Each jewel tells a story of diplomacy, family, and history, yet now they are also stories of modern discretion, personal agency, and changing traditions. For historians, royal watchers, and the public alike, every photograph, every appearance, and every missing piece becomes part of a decades-long puzzle. The jewels of Elizabeth II are no longer silent symbols, they are active participants in the evolving drama of the British monarchy. Now, let's step into the realm of what if. What if one day a tiara that once graced the head of Queen Elizabeth II were to appear under the hammer at an international auction? Imagine the sapphire tiara or the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara up for sale in London, New York, or Geneva. For collectors, it would be the opportunity of a lifetime. For the public, it would be nothing short of a cultural shock. Headlines would explode. Queen's tiara sold to private collector. Royal heirlooms leave the monarchy. British history at auction. Social media would erupt with outrage, fascination, and endless debate. Such a sale would not merely be financial, it would be symbolic. Royal jewellery has always represented continuity, heritage, and the invisible link between generations. Selling one of these treasures would disrupt centuries of tradition, raising questions about the monarchy's ability to safeguard its legacy. Even without an actual auction, the mere thought that Camilla's descendants could legally sell these jewels creates tension. For many, it would feel like the end of an era, the breaking of an unspoken covenant between the monarchy and the public. Public perception, however, is complicated. On one hand, people admire the idea of the monarchy respecting private property and personal choice. Camilla has the legal right to determine the fate of these jewels. On the other hand, these pieces are intertwined with national history. They have witnessed diplomatic visits, coronations, and historic portraits. Their sale or private retention away from the direct line of succession could spark debates not just about wealth, but about stewardship, duty, and the role of symbolism in the modern monarchy. Even hypothetical auctions fuel fascination. Imagine the Sotheby's catalogue, a tiara adorned with rubies gifted from Burma, diamonds from Hyderabad, and pearls from generations past. Each description would read like a mini history lesson, revealing stories of diplomacy, marriage alliances, and royal intrigue. Historians, collectors, and royal enthusiasts would analyze provenance, previous ownership, and ceremonial significance, creating a frenzy of anticipation and discussion. Yet, some argue that these scenarios, while dramatic, reflect the modernization of monarchy. Royal families are no longer strictly defined by rigid traditions. They are navigating private wealth, inheritance, and public perception in a complex global society. Camilla's legal rights, choices, and potential decisions regarding Elizabeth II's jewels demonstrate this evolution. The monarchy's narrative is no longer solely about ceremony. It is now intertwined with personal agency, family dynamics, and the delicate balance between private and public life. In this sense, Elizabeth II's jewels are more than adornments. They are instruments of storytelling, history, and speculation. Each tiara, brooch, necklace, and ring continues to participate in the ongoing drama of the British royal family. With some pieces clearly in Camilla's possession, others missing or uncertain, and a sealed will keeping many details hidden, the next decades promise suspense, speculation, and perhaps even scandal. The legacy of Elizabeth II's personal collection is a story still being written, and the world is watching every glittering step. As we reach the end of this journey through Queen Elizabeth II's extraordinary collection, it's worth pausing to reflect on what these jewels represent. They are far more than diamonds, rubies, sapphires, or gold. They are vessels of history, memory, and identity. Each tiara, brooch, necklace, and ring carries with it stories of diplomacy, celebration, personal triumph, and sometimes heartbreak. They witnessed coronations, state visits, and family milestones, silently chronicling the life of one of the most iconic monarchs in modern history. Yet now the collection has entered a new chapter, one defined not by ceremony or tradition alone, but by personal choice and modern inheritance. The clear presence of 6 tiaras on Camilla, Queen Consort, alongside the uncertainty surrounding other legendary pieces such as the Vladimir tiara, reveals that the collection is no longer a static symbol. It is alive, moving quietly through the hands of heirs, subject to discretion, interpretation, and the subtle influence of public scrutiny. The future remains a tapestry of possibilities. Some jewels may remain with Camilla's descendants, providing them with both financial security and a tangible connection to the late Queen. Others may eventually pass into the hands of Catherine, Princess of Wales, or her children, ensuring continuity of tradition within the line of succession. And yet, the possibility of auction or public sale, though perhaps unlikely, cannot be entirely dismissed. Each scenario carries dramatic consequences for both the royal family and the public's perception of history, heritage, and the monarchy's stewardship. What makes this story so compelling is the tension between private ownership and public significance. These jewels were deeply personal to Elizabeth II, yet they also belong to a larger narrative, a story of Britain, its monarchy, and its people. In this sense, the collection embodies a delicate duality, at once intimate and monumental, personal and historical, static and dynamic. For listeners, the allure lies not only in the shimmer of gemstones, but in the intricate human drama surrounding them. Inheritance, loyalty, choice, and the relentless curiosity of a world that watches the royal family with unending fascination. In the end, Elizabeth II's jewellery tells a story far bigger than fashion or wealth. It is a story of a monarchy adapting to the 21st century, of family dynamics reshaping tradition, and of a legacy that continues to evolve long after the Queen's passing. Each tiara, each brooch, each necklace is a chapter in this living narrative, a silent participant in a saga of power, continuity, and change. And while we may never know the full details of her sealed will, one thing is certain: the jewels of Elizabeth II will continue to captivate, intrigue, and inspire generations to come. The collection, once seen as an unbroken emblem of royal continuity, has quietly transformed into a lens through which we witness history in motion, a glittering, human story of inheritance, choice, and the timeless allure of monarchy. And as the decades unfold, the world will continue to watch, waiting to see where each precious gem finds its next home, and how these iconic treasures will continue to tell the extraordinary story of Queen Elizabeth II.